So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Um, what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is to walk you guys through um, stubble burning, which is a big problem in India. So, the clouds that you see over North India, this is an average day in November and December. Okay, these clouds are not bringing snow, they are not bringing rain. These are clouds that are unfortunately smoke clouds, right? So it's all smoke, somewhat artificial. So the problem statement is that farmers in North India, this is actually one of the most fertile regions of the country. You see this state called Punjab, which effectively means five rivers or five waters, and some of the most fertile ground for crop. And given the agriculture needs of India, it literally accounts for 40% of our cereal production, which is the three states of Punjab, UP, and Haryana. And given the soil conditions and the availability of water, they take two crops a year, with a fairly short window between the fall season and the spring season. So it's about 4 weeks between the two seasons. Large part of this problem is tied to cultivation of rice, which is very water intensive, and especially for varieties that are non basmati paddy, which has a fairly high silica content and therefore cannot be used for cattle fodder, essentially is the root cause of the problem. And more so with the advent of mechanization, which leaves 1.5 feet of stubble in the ground. So good and bad of mechanization. Also keep in mind that between 25 to 40% of farms in that part of North India are held by what are called small and marginal farmers. These are farmers with less than 2 acres, who often are subsistence farmers. So, quite a few of them. And therefore, their ability to afford equipment is somewhat limited. So all of this means that the solution they find fairly easy in the absence of any other assistance is to simply what I call a 5 paisa solution, which is to take a matchstick and set the farm on fire. It clears off the stubble. But obviously, it's not that straightforward because there are health issues, loss of productivity. Delhi airport has flight delays. You have schools that shut down for 2 weeks, etc., etc. Given the increase in soil temperatures, also has a productivity impact. But the biggest impact in my mind is what you see bottom right of the screen, which is almost a 15 million loss of disability adjusted life years. Right. So that's really a big impact. If you assume that an average lifespan of an Indian is about 75 years, that's essentially like saying that you're losing 200,000 lives every year to a problem that's largely solvable. So we wanted to, this is something that we all, especially those of us who live in North India, wring our hands every year. And then, life kind of goes back to normal. And it's, there's also now, it became a bit political. So it's been a bit of an issue. So we said, is there something that we could do to try and bring the communities together to solve this problem? So we spent time on the ground, we took one, a subunit of a district. District is like a county, for those of you who are more familiar with that term. So we took what's called a block, which is 6 odd villages in a district. So we interviewed farmers. And by the way, this was all a pro bono exercise. We worked closely with the state government, the local village elders, interviewed farmers to understand what the problem statement was. This is what they told us. But something that has been pretty much unsolvable. By the way, India is not the only country that has this problem. You'll hear about Singapore shutting down because there are stubble fires in Indonesia. Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Kenya also have this problem. So looks like we aren't the only ones. And now you see folks in Chicago complaining about forest fires coming from Canada. This can't solve that problem, but at least the rice bit we can solve. Okay. We understood the problem as, this 20-day window that you need to solve this stubble thing, not enough equipment on the ground, and the small and marginal farmers not really being able to afford all of that equipment. And by the way, I talk about equipment, but there are several ways to solve this. One is what's called in situ solutions. So you now have enzyme-based solutions that help decompose the stubble. But that 20 to 30-day window and the cost is still not effective, but that's a possible solution. A second possible solution that's also in situ is to try to mulch the stubble into the ground. And there are now combined harvesters and seeders that actually not just mulch, but also plant the next crop. So those are, again, all solutions out there. And then a third solution, which is called ex situ solution, is to take the stubble and turn it into bales of hay, which you can then use as briquettes into power plants or into industrial boilers. Or in another case, it can be used to generate ethanol. So multiple end uses of the stubble. But, as such, the ecosystem together, creating a supply and demand, we believe would be the right way forward. So the solutions are there. Solutions are possible. But the biggest challenge we found was changing attitudes of the people, right? So that's the part that we weren't sure how that might work. And then making the equipment available to everyone was the other problem. And why is that? Because, as I said, the small guys don't have access to the equipment. So they are essentially relying on or renting from their neighbors. But then, they're obviously lower in the priority, and you have only a 20 to 30-day window. The third bit that we also wanted to make sure was how can this be self-sustaining so that there is almost a revenue-based business model. Okay, I'm going to go faster because I've been just warned that I only have a few minutes left. Okay, so we built a mobile app in multiple languages with integrating with the local farmer database. We integrated it with satellite imagery to predict which farm might be ready for harvest so that equipment could be made available there. So the sequencing and essentially, something that allowed us to prioritize farms that were ready and the farmers were ready based on the location and the availability of equipment. So basically, think of this as an Uber for farmers, right? That was really the model. It was in multiple languages. We bought and supplied, I think Mayank mentioned this concept of CSR. So we actually bought and supplied 15 equipment sets, to the community. But then we also got 51 additional local suppliers on board. So we had us and local suppliers, essentially allowing for the ecosystem to be made available. We had about 15% of farmers who accessed the platform, and about 21% of farmland was covered through this. And by the way, the app itself was only one part of the story. I think the bigger effort, as it always is, although this is a digital solution, but the bigger part of the solution was a door-to-door campaign to educate farmers in a very humble manner. You know your business, we are just here to help, right? So just letting them know that there were resources available. But then we also had these little animated videos that talked about the the health implications and how they could benefit, but then also, radio jingles and old style, imagine 1980s style election campaigns, loudspeakers on Jeeps, so we tried all of those things. So ultimately, across the state, there was a 40 to 45% reduction across most districts. But this particular district, so we were present in this district called Karnal, it had a 69% reduction. So significant reduction there. The observed productivity of the equipment was double. So an average baler, for example, is able to cover 10 acres a day. For the equipment in the program, they covered 20 acres a day because of the optimization, right? So I'm an engineer, good old-fashioned, linear optimization. The biggest benefit in my mind was that the disability-adjusted life years saved as a result of fires averted was 170,000, which means that direct impact of this work was 2,430 lives that were saved last year, right? So the point here is the problem difficult? Yes, it is. Is it solvable? Most certainly, yes. So the plan this year is to scale up across all of Haryana. So, we did a part of one district. There are 8 big districts to solve. So if you can solve that, that should be about 50,000 odd lives that we can save. But then the bigger challenge would be to see if we can make an impact in Punjab and Uttar Pradesh. Punjab, most importantly, because it has literally 80% of stubble fires. So that's the plan. But ultimately, in my mind, this is a digital solution with a very, very human intervention. Lots of attitude change and helping farmers realize the true potential. But what's also going to make it successful is the downstream element. So now that we have a lot of companies setting up biofuel plants, bioethanol plants, and we are building an ecosystem of large companies that are, that have production facilities nearby, and they are happy to use the stubble as fuel into their industrial boilers as well. So almost an ecosystem of players that are coming together to solve this. So that's the plan. I don't know if we'll succeed. I'll let you guys know next year when we are here together. So thank you. Okay.